I did not expect to get to go to Paris and Europe by age 23, but that's exactly what happened in April and May of this year. I still love video editing and filming, so I figured I might as well make videos out of this trip. So here's my time in Paris as an animal rights activist. So the LVMH campaign is a campaign that has been going on for over a year because LVMH refuses to drop fur. And I had protested LVMH in literally 4 US states and 1 US district, which was DC. Then it was announced that there would be a convergence in Paris for 11 days, the first action being outside of LVMH's annual shareholder meeting. Paris is also the heart of LVMH, so this was just a great way to escalate the campaign. And in January, my boyfriend and I had just quit our jobs so that we could travel. So naturally, he wanted to go to the convergence and also to Europe. I was nervous about money though, and I also have flight anxiety, so the idea of going to Europe just seemed kind of overwhelming, but I also wanted to do it. We figured out a lot though, and then I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to Europe. We spent the next weeks preparing, and I also had just gotten a passport just in case I would go to Europe. Our flight from Seattle to Paris was fairly cheap with a layover in New York City. By April 17th, we were all packed and ready and we headed out for the airport. We were early, but it was such a big flight that I was fine with being early. And after 5 hours of flying, we finally landed in New York City, my dream city, which I am yet to see. So this layover kind of was a nightmare. We had our Paris flight with Norse, and their mobile tickets weren't working for either of us, and then it was a layover, so there wasn't an area where we could print off tickets, and there was nobody at our gate, so I was just panicking, we don't have boarding passes, we're not going to be let on. And I didn't even know that people at the gate can typically print off the boarding pass for you if you don't have it. But I just asked somebody who was in the area and worked for Norse, and she was like, I'm here for gate 403. So, it wasn't looking good, but finally there was a worker at gate 3, and we asked him to print our boarding passes off, which he did, but he was snarky about it and was like, you were here the whole time, why didn't you come sooner? No one was here. Norse has cheap Atlantic flights, but they are a year-old airline, so. But anyway, we got on the flight and I was both relieved and still having a anxiety headache and nausea. Then we had 7 hours to go and I tried to get some sleep. I basically was in and out of sleeping, but I couldn't get my nausea to go away. I was straight up not having a good time, but eventually we were approaching Paris. Oh, and the sun was back. My nausea still wouldn't go away, but we landed in Paris, France, got our passport stamped, and then I threw up in the bathroom. We took multiple trains to our destination. Perhaps I threw up again, but eventually we got there and I finally got some sleep. France was also my literal first country outside of America, so it was just a lot to take in, that I was in a different country, I was in a different continent, everyone was speaking French. Eventually though, I did become comfortable with France. When I woke up in the evening, we went to a grocery store and I got some things that I knew were vegan. Yeah, there was usually no English on labels. The Google app has a really useful tool though, where you can take a picture of anything and translate the text of the picture. And then just knowing English and some Spanish and some Esperanto helped me translate ingredients, and then a lot of stuff in Paris is also labeled vegan. And 100% vegetal essentially means vegan also. April 19th was our day just to explore Paris, and it was pretty amazing. We got some vegan burgers, which I know sounds very American, but it was good, and it was from Paris anyway. And we saw the Eiffel Tower, it's so big, and then the convergence began on April 20th. What do you say? How many animals died today? This is us protesting outside the Louvre where the LVMH shareholder meeting was happening. And this is us protesting outside of the Louis Vuitton headquarters and also an LVMH owned hotel.
50 dead animals! One third vote!
On my Instagram, you can find my full Paris convergence videos. Paris was just overall a very beautiful city. I loved the architecture of the buildings. The streets were kind of narrow, including the sidewalks, but I loved how you could just walk in the middle of the road. And yeah, I just loved all the shops and just everyone walking everywhere in the street. Now I have to talk about the Paris metro because it was pretty amazing. It's very, very dense. And it was like 30 euros for a week for like I think the whole thing, and it was just pretty good deal, especially compared to other cities. And I just loved trains, man. It was so great. I don't know. It just took us where we needed to go, and it was really efficient and awesome. Yeah, the only problem is when it was really, really crowded during rush hour or like inner city Paris trains. They could be really crowded and maybe you can't even fit. But really loved it overall. So I really hate car dependency, and Paris's metro train system was just top tier. Some of our chants were in French and the protesting continued. This was us protesting outside of the LVMH headquarters. One way my boyfriend and I were able to afford our trip to Europe was through the language Esperanto. Esperanto is essentially a language that was invented with the purpose of being easier to learn. And it is very easy to learn because I've been learning it. And I took Spanish for 4 years, and Esperanto just makes a whole lot more sense. My boyfriend learned it in 2015, and he relearned it the past year along with me learning it so that we could use this service called Passport a Servo, which basically is a service where you can stay with other Esperantists and it's free. You just have to be able to speak the language. And here's a map showing where Esperantists are who you can stay with. Well, theoretically stay with, because a lot of times people don't reply or they're busy. But anyway, on this map you can see how dense Europe is with Esperantists. And we were fortunate enough to find an Esperantist in Paris who let us stay there for 14 days. But beyond the service, I really do enjoy learning Esperanto.
Film you walking.
The first days of protesting had the most hours, but after that it became pretty consistent of 4 hours, like a 2-hour protest and then another 2-hour protest later in the day. Protesting 4 hours a day, day after day after day after day, did become a lot, but what the animals are going through on fur farms is so much worse.
LVMH, what do you say?
How many animals died today?
Famous consumers, what do you say?
How many animals died today?
Then April 22nd, I didn't go to the actions because I felt sick, which turned out to be most probably dehydration. And I didn't go to anything April 23rd either because I was recovering from it. I blame Washington's water quality being so high because France's just seemed bad in comparison. And then also, Europe just didn't have water, like drinking fountains like this. And then tap water at restaurants usually costs money. And I also felt incentivized to drink less water because the bathrooms were not free. Having to pay to use the bathroom just seems like something America would do and not Europe, but for some reason it's reversed. Later on, I found out Paris has these public toilets all over that are free. They're not the best thing in the world, but they work if you squat. But anyway, I recovered from my dehydration by drinking a shit ton of water, and the next day I was ready to take on LVMH again.
Still put money in these businesses. we call it fashion.
Then finally, Paris's food. Paris had so many vegan restaurants and so much good food. A lot of the prices I would compare to like American prices. But there was this place called Land and Monkeys, and they had cheap vegan bakery items, and they were very clutch and delicious. Paris also had multiple vegan grocery stores, which was really cool. A lot of the grocery stores in Paris didn't seem to have like vegan alternatives, but if you just went to one of these vegan grocery stores, boom, there was a ton there. But if you are shopping at one of those other grocery stores, you can just get basic food like this. You don't need vegan meat. But yeah, the food was just really good and not too expensive. I have all these pictures and more, and then where the food came from on my Instagram, so you can check that out if you want. Once we figured out how to read ingredients, shopping was basically a breeze, and we found a lot of great stuff, including France's bread, which is just top tier. It's cheap, it has not many ingredients, and it just tastes way better. Overall, Paris was great. I loved the city. I loved so many things we did and ate and saw. I loved the convergence and getting to meet and do activism with activists from all over Europe. That was amazing. The train system was great and we got around pretty okay, not knowing French. Not everything was perfect though. Sometimes I was cold while protesting. I had some issues with the house we stayed at. Sorry, I'm hiccuping. Sometimes the subway was so crowded that we couldn't even squeeze on the train. And when the trains were super crowded, we really had to worry about pickpocketing, but luckily we were never pickpocketed. And European homes usually don't have a dryer, so it was taking like 2 to 5 days for our clothes to dry. Things are never perfect, but the things I was most excited to see that I had always wanted to see were the Eiffel Tower, the Arc de Triomphe, the Paris catacombs. Literally worth the money. I was so excited. I wanted to go for years, and it was so cool. We got to see the Eiffel Tower sparkle at night, which was amazing. And we never stopped showing up to LVMH stores, pressuring them to drop fur.
Du silence et de la mort. Liberation.
Towards the end of our time in Paris, we bought tickets so that we could climb to the first 2 floors of the Eiffel Tower, which was a lot of stairs and climbing, but it was so worth it to see the views of Paris from the top and just know that we climbed the Eiffel Tower. It is so big, and this was such a cool experience. The Louvre was all booked out, so we couldn't go, but we went to some other cool museums. LVMH is the biggest fur target we will ever have, and the campaign has gone on for so long, I assume because they're such a big corporation. But these tactics do work with getting fur selling companies to drop fur. It has worked time and time again, so it's just only a matter of time until LVMH drops fur. But I don't know how long the campaign will last. It's already been over a year, but no matter how long it lasts, we will keep showing up around the globe, putting global pressure on LVMH to drop fur.
Anally, evangelically, and execute them. Skinning them alive.
Shame on you for what you do. Shame on you for what you do.
Here is a bonus video of a cat we saw running around near our train station. And then right after that, we saw a muskrat, and yes, that's 2 geese in the background who are always there, but I was filming the muskrat. He was pretty cute, or they or she was pretty cute. And this is the La Défense area of Paris, which I thought was like super cool. But yeah, I got to do animal rights activism in France and Paris, and
50 tortured animals! 50 screaming animals!
I got to go to Paris with my boyfriend of over a year, which meant everything to me. He is my person and my other half. Oh, and then May 1st was our last day to explore Paris. The convergence was over, but that happened to be on French Labor Day, and everything kept being closed, so we were struggling to find food. We eventually did, but we had to eat it in a Subway because it was raining. And then our train was shut down because there was a protest, probably because of the French protesters protesting the retirement age being raised. Which I totally support their movement, but it was just such an inconvenient day to end Paris with. The protesters were on the train tracks for a while, so we ended up having to take another train and then a bus, but like 2 hours later we got back. Our next country to visit was the United Kingdom, so I will be making another video on our experience there.